Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to your show, Coffee with Expert. This is your host, Ranmay here. And Matthew, how are you?
Hey, Ranmay. Doing very good. Thanks. Pleasure to be on here. Thank you for inviting me.
Lovely. Matthew, before we move any forward, let's get to the human behind the mic. Why don't you talk us through your journey thus far and how do you start out Step Labs and land up in the digital marketing space? And how is it going now?
Yeah, certainly happy to do so. Step Labs is a business that I started several years ago. We initially started servicing Shopify custom theme requests and Webflow development requests for marketing agencies and e-com brands. We have now an exclusive focus on Shopify CRO contracts. What I mean by CRO, of course, is conversion rate optimization, which is ensuring that we are operating as a conversion partner, working with some of the largest 8 to 9 figure D2C brands currently in the space to make the most out of their website and ensure that their website is a vehicle for generating revenue and not losing revenue through the funnel.
Great. Can you share the turning point that sparked the idea for starting Step Labs during your final year at university? From the transition from being a student to an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's funny because the transition didn't occur post-university for me. By the time I left university, in my final month,
Right.
when I was doing my dissertation and my exams, we already had double-digit clients and like a team. So it was a bit of an unusual way to finish university, and it was definitely there were substantial challenges in managing workload. I wasn't quite as like operationally savvy back then, I would say. But the turning point towards starting Step Labs initially probably would have been a desire to have an outsized impact on different businesses' growth that wouldn't have been possible just working inside of the locus of one organization's department. So when you obviously enter like a graduate scheme, you can get in the UK put into some really good salaries. I had the opportunity to work at JP Morgan, other like banking institutions like this, but it never really appealed to me to not be responsible for a deal or like substantial outcomes until I'm 28 or 30 and to just be on like Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint. Something that has always been appealing to me is using everything in my might and power and willpower and intellectual brain power to like see results through processes that I've actioned. And it was always enjoyable for me that from day one, we could build websites for six-figure brands or six-figure businesses and have an impact on their growth through having control over like a central piece of their organization as a whole. And I've always really seen entrepreneurship as a vehicle for personal growth and for actually being able to take more responsibility than you probably can in an employment capacity. So that was something that was very motivating for me. And I've deeply enjoyed the fact that last year, it's not, you can't perfectly quantify this stuff, but last year, by our estimates, we were responsible for about 35 million in attributable revenue from split tests that we ran and other efforts. And I don't think there's many other avenues in which you can have such impact at a young age than running your own business.
Lovely. And reflecting on the evolution of Step Lab from its inception to where it stands today, right? You guys are making an impact. What has been the most unexpected or surprising aspect so far of your entrepreneurial journey?
I would say that the most surprising aspect of the journey has been that you can hit specific revenue milestones that you would have never thought achievable, but that doesn't dictate the quality of your business. Now, the quality of your business is dictated by the quality of the revenue and the way that you attain your revenue on a monthly and annual basis. For those reasons, let me dig into a bit more depth. Now, initially, we actually hit, and where we are now is that our business is all MRR now. Like this is recurring revenue from like contracts that we've been grateful enough to have with clients that we've worked with for a long period of time. And the security that you get from building a business based on recurring revenue is completely different to building a business based on one-off contracts, which are up 1 month, down the next. It makes it so much more difficult to scale. And so I would say the most surprising thing has been that actually getting revenue wasn't the hard thing. Quality of revenue was the hard thing. And we had a business early doors that was generating decent money, but I was working like 110 hours a week. So the
Yeah.
business making good money, but the quality of the business, the quality of the operations, how systemized the entity is, it wasn't feasible or sustainable or enjoyable. So I
Right.
think really this understanding that like the metrics that we quantify revenue don't tell the whole story. And it is possible to build the dream and not the prison when you're an entrepreneur. But to avoid building the prison, not the dream,
Right.
you need to know what revenue you're going after, and you need to know what needs to be done to operationalize the business so that you aren't dependent for every single cog to move.
And touching upon that from a business standpoint, SOPs are so important, right? Specific frameworks that you follow as a business, as an agency to cater to your clients' requirements. So do you have any specific SOPs wherein you feel, have worked wonderful for you in terms of working with clients to ensure consistent results for them?
Yeah. I'm laughing because I'm like known as Mr. SOP. So this is a meme in Step Labs. Like you have to be able to systemize your business, because otherwise you can't map out
Absolutely.
you can't map out cause and effect. You need to know what inputs cause what outputs, and how you can drive better inputs to have better outputs. And garbage in, garbage out is always the same thing. But you also need to instill feedback loops into your company so that you get an understanding of how processes are developing and what needs to be changed inside of those systems. So you got your inputs, outputs, process in the middle, and then your feedback loop. So our SOPs that have been extremely valuable have mostly ranged probably around project management. So standardizing communication with clients. We will be communicating with our clients every day, regardless if they're the smallest client, if they're the biggest client. And it's not to over communicate, but it's because you need 100% transparency on how initiatives are developing and whether you need anything from them. And even if you don't need anything from them, just the check-in is always required. When you're operating in the service space, 80% of the business is communication, because communication drives good results. You're going to need to intersect with other agencies. You're going to need to intersect with people that are in-house marketing teams. If you don't have the ability to effectively communicate as an agency to a brand, you're in deep trouble. So I would say our communication and project management SOPs are probably the most significant, but also standardizing development processes. Like we have a very in-depth advanced speed theme or optimization guide for Shopify. Standardizing like development processes like this make it so much easier to train staff, because ultimately your business is going to grow based on the loop of how quickly you can hire staff, train them, and get to a decent like revenue per head that you're comfortable with as a business, that doesn't overload your staff, but at the same time is validating the efforts that you're putting in and the training and onboarding that you're providing. So yeah, those would be the ones that are the most impactful for us.
Lovely. And in talking about e-commerce brands, Matthew, what are some of the common pitfalls that you feel that brands make while analyzing website data, and how can they be avoided?
When specifically analyzing website data? Yeah. So this is the biggest one, in my opinion. Your conversion rate the industry should not be called conversion rate optimization. I despise kind of the term CRO agency, even though that is what our industry is called. And it's because we view ourselves more as a revenue growth partner for businesses. We take control of your website, but as a vehicle for growing revenue and profitability. I always say this to clients when we onboard. I could promise you to 500% increase your conversion rate within 3 days. And they go, how would you do that? We've got all these conversion rate problems. How would you do that? And it's quite simple, which is if we drop the price 95%, your conversion rate's going to go up 500%, because more people within the same funnel can purchase now, because price is the biggest lever for conversion rate. Now, what would happen if we dropped the price 95%? Yes, conversion rate would go up, but do you know what would go down? Profitability and probably even revenue. So what we are really trying to educate customers on is that conversion rate can be a bit of a misnomer in terms of something that you think you need to focus on, but you probably don't need to focus on. And the industry as a whole is certainly a misnomer, conversion rate optimization. What we want to be optimizing for is profitability and control of our funnel, and working on your website efficiency, its load speed, running specific offers and split testing those, split testing price. These are 1,000,000% valuable ways of improving your conversion rate, but you're aiming to improving your conversion rate is a second order effect of, perhaps not a second order effect, but certainly a corollary effect or a collateral effect of focusing on profitability and revenue growth. So
Mhm.
I say that's probably the biggest thing when analyzing the Shopify dashboard that I think people get wrong.
All right, lovely. Matthew, from an onboarding standpoint, right? Walk us through your typical client onboarding process at Step Labs, and how do you ensure that it is a good fit and understand the brand's unique needs and goals?
Yeah, certainly. We firstly start off by taking a discovery call, and
Mhm.
we have a routing form before the discovery call, which asks a few questions so that we know based on like rough level of revenue per month and things like this,
Right.
whether it's going to be a conversation that makes sense, because you do need a certain amount of traffic to even begin split testing on your website. And if you
Mhm.
aren't at that stage, there's not quite as much that we can do. But really, beyond the routing form, then we get to the discovery call. And in the discovery call, really, you don't want to be pitching. You need to be understanding the business and
Right.
their problems, because you'll get different answers based on the quality of the questions that you answer. And if you don't feel like you're getting great responses, you're probably not asking great questions. So
I
I think,
agree.
yeah, so I think digging deeper into firstly, obviously, like you need to build rapport, but the second stage is truly understanding if this is a good fit for your business. And if it isn't a good fit and you feel like you still need to push the deal through, you have a lead gen problem. And so the lead gen is then the thing that you need to work on, because your business is never going to retain its staff and retain its customers if you're taking on clients that aren't suitable for you just to get cheap revenue. It comes back to my point earlier about good revenue and bad revenue. Now, once you've identified the customers that you want to work with, psychological onboarding is just as important as practical onboarding. You need to congratulate clients for making the decision to work with you, because they're going to make their decision within the first 48 hours, whether they find you to be an extremely beneficial and high quality partner or someone who's a bit riskier and unreliable. And if they think you're unreliable from the start and you demonstrate any inconsistency with, I'm going to get you this by this date, or I'm going to send you a checklist of things that we need from you by this hour. If you miss those deadlines, early doors, these are micro promises that have failed. And it's
Mhm.
really hard to build back that trust gap over time. So some of the biggest things I would say is like focusing on the psychological aspect of onboarding and ensuring that people feel like they have trust in you and that you will deliver on what you've promised to deliver on, and that you're reducing their anxiety, because it is scary, specifically if you have a deposit up front, you don't have a 1 month free trial or anything like that. You've got to empathize with the customer and understand that they have probably tried to improve their website with other agencies before and possibly been let down. And I think anything you can do to like ease that burden psychologically of onboarding a new agency is a valuable thing.
I'm glad you raised the point about, the proper sales funnel land up at those good sales team is or marketing team is not pushing the leads the way it should not be ideally. So I'm glad that you raised that point. And in terms of differentiating yourself, obviously there are a lot of agencies uh, doing this work. So how does Step Labs differentiate itself in the competitive landscape of web dev agencies, particularly in terms of the unique value prop it offers to 7-8 figure DTC brand owners seeking the revenue growth?
Sure. So the biggest way that we differentiate ourselves is by operating exclusively as a revenue growth partner and capping the amount of people that we work with. So we onboard between 3 to 6 customers per quarter, which is very small.
Mhm.
And we deliberately decide we probably only take on like 20% of the customers that we have calls with. And the reason why we do that is so that we can be certain that we're delivering results. Our approach is extremely extensive and intensive. We are working on covering all of their development, all of their design, their research, and their strategy, while simultaneously producing a monthly roadmap for them, which pulls the biggest levers possible to grow revenue. Everything we do is focused on growing revenue and profitability. And all of the decisions that come from that, which landing page campaigns to run, what aspects of the marketing calendar are going to produce like events that we can run and tailor specific campaigns around. All of these things are focused on through the lens of a monthly roadmap that we deliver for clients. From the perspective of differentiation, I suppose it's
Mhm.
just, yeah, like we are not focused on being just a landing page provider. We're not selling a service, we're selling a partnership, and we don't really lose customers. We maybe have lost 2 customers in the last 14 months, maybe one. I need to go back and check the dates. But yeah, it's certainly like the approach is Italian artisan, not suit supply. That's my friend.
Great, Aman, and good stuff that you shared there in terms of having your client retention as one of your priorities. Right? So, in terms of, can you share some advanced CRO techniques that you found particularly useful in boosting conversions for your clients?
The biggest is if you can run split tests focusing on price. So when people, this is a real gem, I would say, but when people first price their product, they do it on napkin math. And I don't mean to be disingenuous, but this is what tends to happen, which is that you look at where you're positioned in the market, whether you're going to be a premium or luxury supplier, or if you're going to be somebody who is possibly a lower quality solution, but substantially cheaper. And you base your pricing off of that. So if you're going to be the lower quality solution, but more accessible, 10% lower than the competition. And if you're going to be premium, 10% higher. And it will be off these rough estimates. And it's not that you would be 100% wrong. It's that you're not going to be completely understanding the price elasticity of demand curve. And if you did understand that curve better and you were able to price to a 1% increment or percentile of accuracy, you'd basically be able to capture the differential in revenue between where you're currently pricing if you're 10% off in terms of accuracy there. And if you can get that to 1% through testing price in different localities, revenue is going to instantly go up because nobody's going to, it's highly unlikely that you're within the top 1% of accuracy in terms of understanding the exact elasticity for the market. And even if you do, you will not understand it on a month by month cadence, especially if you're in your first or second year of business. So the quicker you can operate, the best way to run these tests really is in Europe. So you pick two countries like Germany or Liechtenstein or Luxembourg or France. And from those specific countries, you operate with two different prices and a hypothesis. And then you evaluate the data between revenue and profitability from there. And then you scale that based on the results out to America and if it's congruent. It usually is, because there's not going to be that much geographical difference as long as mid or higher income countries in Europe. So that would be the biggest gem that I think I can provide that I don't really hear anybody else talking about.
Lovely. And finally, Matthew, can you share a piece of advice or a mantra that has personally, resonated with you throughout your journey as a founder for our audiences listening today?
Two things. 80% of it is stress tolerance. And the second thing would be that never get too high, never get too low. Like business is just ride, especially agency business, just riding waves. And you're going to have waves that feel like tsunamis because they're horrific. And then you're going to have times where you feel like you're on the Mediterranean coast chilling. And the better you can get at managing yourself and managing your stress tolerance levels through the downs, and also managing just becoming too excessive through the ups, the better you're going to be able to lead the team. Like the more emotional control that you can demonstrate as a leader, the more emotionally controlled the whole organization is. So I think understanding stress tolerance and that it's never as good as it seems or as bad as it seems, and that your accuracy is probably off in terms of your assessment, it has been one of the most true statements that I think I've taken with me throughout business thus far.
Great. Lovely, Matthew. This has been a brilliant conversation, and I'm sure that audiences would have benefited a lot out of the insights that you have shared today. So thank you so much once again for taking our time to do this with us.
No problem. It's a pleasure. I love doing having these conversations, and been a fan of the podcast. And I think that I've got personal insights out of it. And I hope that people can even get one thing out of what I've said today. And if so, that would be great.
I'm sure they will. Thank you so much. Cheers, man.
Thanks, Ranmay. Cheers.